Hey friends, welcome back to the Gentle and Lowly Co podcast. I'm Addie Ott, your host, and today we are going to be talking about finding community right where you are. And today we have a special guest. Her name is Patrice Patrick, and I'm very excited to introduce you guys to her. Patrice and we actually became friends through the resource I mentioned last week called SPL, or Single Purpose League, and we both met at Dollywood in Tennessee. And we became friends during lunch. We got to play trivia together. And so, shout out to our trivia team, the Rally Reindeer. But first, Patrice, just welcome to the Gentle and Lowly Co podcast and just introduce yourself.
Yeah, can I just also say though, like how good was that meal at
It was
Dollywood that
so
we
good. Oh my gosh. It was
like,
amazing. That
like I
chicken
don't
and mashed potatoes. Oh man. So,
listen,
yeah.
that by far the best amusement park food I've ever had
Yes.
in my entire life. Okay, I just had to say
Hands
that. So
down.
shout out to
Yeah.
Dollywood. And yeah, I'm Patrice Patrick. I'm based in Southern California. And I have made sort of my bread and butter doing TV production work, like production management and green room design and preparing performers, performing artists, green rooms and dressing rooms, like their personal spaces backstage. I kind of fell into that line of work. I kind of went to, not kind of, I actually did go to film school.
Yeah. That's
And
awesome.
I really wanted to be a writer and a director, but I feel like nothing is wasted in the
Mhm.
Lord. And like I still write to this day. I've held on to a blog for the past like 15, 16 years that I continue to write in. Now I get to have community as well around me and digital communities where I get to share my content, where there's just been some really great follower friends of mine that have tracked with me over the past 15, 20 years. And I've just been writing about my faith journey, working in Hollywood, being single. We both met in
Yeah.
Single Purpose
Yeah.
League. And again, these were not all journeys that I thought I was going to be walking
Mm.
into,
Yeah.
but writing is still very much a desire of my heart. In a weird way, doing like social media and having to do
Mm.
like different videos or me creating content for my friends and my family is still a way that I get to stay creative and direct, so to
Yeah.
speak. And so, yeah, but I'm in this what I call the beautiful in between. Like, I knew even before the world shut down in 2020 that I was going to slowly be coming out of the entertainment industry, like doing it less, like it wasn't going to
Right.
necessarily be
Yeah.
full time.
Mhm.
And I still feel like I'm a bit in that in between. I have a lot of fun side creative things that I do because I'm a
Yeah.
creative at heart, but I'm just trying to figure that out with the Lord. But I've always served in my local church, no matter what part of LA County I have lived in.
Mhm.
I just knew as a single person, I knew early on, I learned really early, like I can't do this by myself. I wanted community. I wanted friendship. I wanted covering. I wanted to sit at the feet of people that were wiser and older than me, or and like shoulder to shoulder with
Mm.
people
Mhm.
that were doing life, and had questions and some answers maybe. And so yeah, I'm in that space. I live kind of outside of LA proper. I'm an hour and a half away in the high desert area. It's a place where I grew up. Didn't think I'd be back here. It's funny how the Lord does
Wow.
that.
I totally understand that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So coming back home,
Oh.
been a really long journey. I thought it was just 6 months. And here we
Oh,
are 7 years later.
wow.
And I'm in that in between, but you're catching me also like not just off of Dollywood, and us
Mhm.
like connecting, which was so beautiful.
So cool.
But then I met someone, like I met a guy, not just someone, like a guy afterwards.
Yeah.
And it was a beautiful sort of dating journey, which is still kind of in its like he kind of basically let me go, broke up with me, but then also
Yeah.
was like, "Can we be friends forever?" And it's like, so
Yeah.
I'm in this weird space right now,
Transition. Yeah.
but my community has been such a lifesaver.
Mm.
Like I included my dating village, and we could talk about that later on if that's where we go. But in when I met this
Mhm.
person, which, I haven't dated a ton, honestly, and this felt like God was really on it,
Mhm.
but I included my dating village, which is
Right.
literally like 20 people, all age
That's
ranges.
that's huge.
Some
Yeah. That's so good to have that accountability or just counsel where you're not making, different decisions or just processing different things alone because
yeah.
we can just go in one direction and like think that's totally it.
Mhm.
without anyone else. It's easy to do that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's huge. Yeah.
Yeah, there's something that like I think Emily P. Freeman, who's
Oh,
the author of
yes.
the yeah, we love her, right? The Next Right
Yes.
Thing. She talks about like
Mm-hmm.
and she's written in her she's a beautiful newsletter that she puts out
Mm-hmm.
occasionally as well, but she's talked about like she's learned to trust herself like over these
Yeah.
years,
Yeah.
but not just to trust herself only.
Mm-hmm.
This is when we get to invite our community in. And so I had to go through a journey where I was afraid to make a choice. Like, God, just choose for me. Just bring my husband to
Just
my future.
do it.
Just
Yeah.
do it. You just choose. And I
If
just
I
felt like
pray enough, it's gonna happen. Yeah.
yeah, like I don't want to touch it because my picker is off. Like I don't know who I'm, like,
Just drop
and
him off at the front
just
door.
drop them off because I didn't trust my choice. And I
Yeah.
just felt like the Lord's like,
Mm.
I want you to have the gift of choosing,
Yeah.
and I trust your choice. And you're going to also have wisdom around you. You don't have to do it
Right.
all alone. At the end of the day, the
Yeah.
choice will be yours, respectively. You
Right.
get to own it. But I
Mm-hmm.
love how Emily P. Freeman talks about like really learning to trust yourself, like, and not just only. But it is
Mm-hmm.
important that you can trust yourself with decisions that big decisions, little
Yeah.
decisions.
Oh
Anyway.
yeah, absolutely. Oh, I love that you brought Emily up. Oh my goodness. Love all of her stuff. But first, even just like a couple thoughts, like the work that you do, I don't know if I'd ever heard of people, designing green rooms and doing that, but coming from SCAD, from art school, just in like the film industry, like we have a really big major there in Savannah, and that is so cool. And I think about like what a way to put radical hospitality for people, before like all the things they have like a homey space in a way that you're able to like show that light and to, be different in LA, in there. And so I
Mhm.
think that's really unique, but also you get to connect with all the creatives and then do all
Mhm.
the things you're doing. And so I
Yeah.
totally agree and understand all those things in that sense of just the creative world and just online and just having different connections and being able to be used or be a vessel to the Lord, like with whatever He's given us to steward. And sometimes it's just, stepping out in faith and doing that. And it looks different than our day-to-day job, but using the tools in the ways that we're wired to do it. And again, trusting ourselves, and trusting God that, okay, this is a good decision, something we can do.
Yeah.
So that's so good. Okay, but first, we're going to get into our topic, but I want to talk about music. We have music of the week. And so, did anything stand out this week for you?
Oh man, I love this question. And I had
Good.
to like go back to my Spotify, to kind of
Yeah.
like what was I in? Because I feel like for me it changes almost daily and the Lord
Yeah.
kind of will highlight something sometimes depending on
Yep.
the season,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like something
Yep.
daily. And I feel like there's two songs that I want to actually mention if that's okay.
Okay.
Can I mention two
Yeah,
songs? Okay.
absolutely. Of
Um,
course.
because one is just like a country song. It's not a
Oh,
worship song.
no,
And
that's fine. Yeah.
I love country music, but there's this
Oh.
sort of obscure song. I don't know of how obscure. I
Mm.
don't hear it a ton, but it's by
Yeah.
Kane Brown and it's called Work.
Okay.
And it's just talking about sort of a couple being in love and like
Mm-hmm.
choosing basically doing the work to choose one another.
Yeah.
And it
Mm.
it will be tough. Like if we want to make this work, it's going to take work, but it's worth it. Like
It's
it's not
worth
going to
it.
be
Yeah.
yeah, it's not
Yep.
going to be easy. It's going to be worth it.
Mm-hmm.
And there was something a friend of mine said to me at the beginning of last week, and I was still in the sort of the in-between
Mm-hmm.
space of was this relationship going to move further? Were we going to continue to
Right.
date or
Go
not?
forward. Yeah.
And she said, and she's a part of my dating village, she's like, well, regardless if the Lord opens it up for
Mhm.
now, it's still going to take work.
Yeah.
It still might be a little bit tough. It might be hard. No one
Mm-hmm.
wants to hear that word. We always want to hear things are
Yeah.
going to be easy, uncomfortable. And then she's
Yeah.
like, so if it is a yes, it's still going to
Mhm.
take work. And
Yeah.
then if it's a no, it's also going to take work.
Take some
Like
work. Yeah.
you're going to have
They
to work
both
that out.
are. Yeah.
Yeah, work that
Yep.
out with the
That's true.
Lord.
Mm-hmm.
And so that song really speaks to me in this
Mm.
season. And then there's Madison Ryann Ward, who is one of my favorite in the last couple of years, one of my favorite Christian artists. And she just had a new single drop called Strength.
Okay.
And that is something I just feel like heaven is kind of singing
Mm.
over me in this season as I'm kind of unpacking heartbreak again,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
like it's like, okay, I just got
Yeah.
over a heartbreak, a disappointment in this area,
Like
not even,
again. Right.
again.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
And I just feel like that
Mm.
is like the Lord kind of speaking strength, like he is my strength in all of
Mm.
this. And to also remember who I am in
Right.
him
Yes.
through that. So those are the two songs
Oh,
that are coming to
that's
mind.
good. Yeah, I honestly don't listen to a ton of country. I should expand my music range a little bit, but that might be a song I come to love. I mean, because there can be like this really beautiful story, in all the
Mhm.
different music and things, but I like more of a narrative story. And I think that's really cool. It's a beautiful kind of depiction of any relationship, any friendship. It's gonna take work, but even specifically like that and dating, like it's going to take more work, it to make it flourish, which
Yeah.
is true. But I
Yeah.
definitely have to look up the other one, Madison. That's
Yeah, I can
something
share
to
that
do.
with you
Yes.
afterwards.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
we'll put it in the
definitely.
show notes, of
Yeah.
course. So
Yeah.
good. Well, for me, if you know passion, I'm on the older side of college, post grad and stuff. So I'm too old to go, but I still love it. And I talked about it a couple weeks ago. And so it just kind of concluded. But this song, I think we sang it at church this past weekend too. It is He Who Is to Come, and it has
Mm.
passion. And so
Yeah.
Brooke, and then Kristian, he's the
Yeah.
guy who's always with them too. And like,
Yeah.
oh my goodness, though, the way they sing it's so good, but also like to sing it with your body of believers is just so impactful. So
Yeah.
that one was definitely this week. I was like, okay, this is amazing. Just really encouraging and just remembering like who he is in the midst of, everything that's going on in the world, in the midst of starting a
Hmm.
new year, and just really surrendering all the things that we can't control.
Yeah.
So that was the first one for me. And then this song, it's like a throwback. This song, it came out, I had to like look it up. It came out in 2014, but I found it like when I was in college. And it is I Will Follow by Guerra.
Okay.
And this song though, it's so beautiful. It's really, really encouraging.
Oh, wow. I have to look that one up as well.
It's
That name sounds
yeah.
really familiar.
I think he's kind of based out of Chicago, which isn't too far from me. But
Okay.
being a Christian creative, and like we sang this at the end, kind of like our not benediction, but almost like our response to a message. There's like one song or like a tag of a song we sing sometimes,
Hmm.
and it's just like these lyrics are just so good. Like I believe everything that you say you are. I believe I've
Mm.
seen your unchanging heart in the good things and in the hardest part. I believe and I will follow you. And then even this, like, when I find myself so far from home and you lead me somewhere that I don't want to go. And then it just even goes like into even like running this race well to receive Christ. And just like
Mm.
what a beautiful kind of declaration of the gospel and the commitment. Again and again, if you've been following Jesus for, a month or years of your life.
That's right.
But it's just a good reminder of like, yeah, this is what I'm committing to, and this is the stake in the ground.
Yeah.
And I don't like, I feel like that's not a really popular song you sing in church and stuff.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
just because it's not as well known. And so
Yeah.
when we sing it, I was like, oh my gosh, this is my favorite thing of all time. So
Yeah.
it just felt really sweet that the Lord was like, here we go, and just to sing it together.
Mm.
And it was just on, like, I just listened to like an old playlist of songs over the weekend. And then I was like, oh my gosh, this is so beautiful. Like, what a sweet gift.
Wow.
And to not diminish like those small things, the ways he's talking to us or speaking and like using other people and using friends or the right thing we needed to hear through a podcast or through social media, which,
Yeah.
they're good tools and good things to help us grow, but not replacing those things, but just being attentive to like what God is using in our sphere of influence to pour into us,
Hmm.
and just thanking him for the way he's working because he is our closest friend if we'll listen to him. So, so good. But those ones, I think we got a pretty good diverse kind of group of songs. So that would be fun for everyone to
Yeah.
listen to.
Yeah.
So fun. And then we also do this segment called Theme of the Week. So, what was a theme that stood out to you this week, Patrice?
Oof. You know what's coming up for me right now as you ask me that question is identity.
Oh, yeah.
Identity. And that's something I've been sort of talking about too on my podcast. That's
Mm-hmm.
kind of just been naturally with some of the
Yeah.
guests.
Mm-hmm.
But really, and I feel like I have to, the Holy Spirit is so kind. Like I have to
Mm.
get reminded of this. I feel like daily,
Yeah.
hourly.
Sometimes. Yeah. Yep.
minute by minute,
Yes.
of who I really am, that he delights in
Hmm.
me. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, like this theme of like, remember, it's kind of like the Lion King, like the OG Lion King,
Oh yeah. No, yeah. The
you
OG.
know what I mean?
Yeah. Come on.
Remember who you are. I feel like
Oh.
that's kind of a phrase that the Lord is just kind of gently whispering to my heart.
Mm.
Like, remember who you are in the midst of all this sort of unknown, in the in between, in the heartbreak, in these things that are kind of questioning your worth.
Yeah.
Like, remember who you are. And so
Mm.
that's kind of a theme that I'm wanting to sit more with actually this week.
Yeah, that's so beautiful, and honestly, like you're saying, so many things can be coming at us, but we can easily just flip and put our identity in if we're not spending time with him or we're not, just in the conversation with him. And so it's such a good reminder. And yeah, I think sometimes we can just get so distracted by what is our true identity. So that's such a good reminder. This kind of goes along that theme, ironically enough.
Mhm. Yay.
I was doing some organizing and then I came across old journals, and I feel like you're probably a journaler. I don't know.
Yep, I am.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah, since
Big
13.
time.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
see? Oh my gosh. Yeah,
Yeah.
it was whenever I was in eighth grade, maybe earlier than that, but
Yeah.
that was one of my like, first ones. That I was like, okay, I'm actually gonna do this thing. But probably about like from 10 years ago, just like reading different journal entries and just seeing like the prayers I was praying and like the ways I was just like in my quiet time with the Lord and just what he was teaching me. And I was just so encouraged. Like I wrote these things
Hmm.
down and I was like, I don't think when I wrote it down I'd actually like do those things or forgot about those prayers. And then it's like, wow, he actually did it or he's doing it or different things. And so I just think like what a gift it is to see our history with the Lord. And I was, much younger then, like maybe 15, 20, just different ages. And even like when I was first going to college and just, some of those big changes in your life. And God cares about the small things all the way to the big things. And so, what a gift that is. And we've talked on the podcast before, like, such a powerful tool that journaling is. And so,
Hmm.
here it is again. It comes up all the time. And it's so, so good. So,
Yes.
maybe make that like one of the not resolutions, but maybe a thing that you want to like grow towards, with
Mm.
just, you can do that with an like voice memos too if you're not like a writer. So, yeah. But I like to write to be still, so
Same,
which is
same.
important, but you get that.
Yes.
Yeah. So I think that's so good and just like remembering, yeah, our true identity and just seeing like this beautiful opportunity of the more we follow him, the more we understand like how he sees us and who he is wanting us to call, like who he's calling us to be. And we're just continuing to discover who that person is, who looks more like him, which is such a beautiful gift with him. So I think that is so encouraging, and it kind of ties into our topic because, finding community right where we are, a lot of times to be a good friend or, just to be in community, so like we need to know who we are first, and then even like to then give to other people. And so
Mm.
just first, though, kind of like segueing into that, like in your current season of life, we kind of talked about this, but how have you continued to invite more friends into your life or your circle? Because sometimes, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm 27, but the older you get, it can feel like your circle at first, you find your friends in high school, you find your friends in college, you find your friends at your job, and then it's like it's harder to expand it. And so, how do we kind of combat that where it's like, hey, there's actually more room for you to like pull up a chair to this table, right?
Yeah, I love this question so much and have spent some time exploring this with the Lord and with others. And the first thing that comes to mind um, in really expanding and connecting with community right where you're at is being honest.
Mm.
And I know this sounds sort of like a really like rando thing to say right now, but I'll sort of try to unpack some of that.
Hmm.
We're talking about identity and like, knowing who you are, also knowing where you are emotionally. Like,
Mm.
where do you feel like you are? Like, if you are depleted, say that.
Yeah.
If people are getting on your nerves, say
Mhm.
that. Like I say this to the Lord all the time. I love people. And then there's a season when you
Yes.
get peopled out.
Yeah.
Say that, be honest. So you've got it. That's a first conversation between you and the Lord, or you and
Mhm.
your journal, or you and your voice memo. And then though, from that place, once you start practicing being honest with the Lord, whether it's just within that day, that week, start to, and this is gonna take a little bit of courage and bravery, especially the older you get. I'm
Mhm.
44,
Yeah.
and I don't think anyone's really mastered like how to
Mhm.
make friends as adults. It's like
Yeah.
it's
It's
always
the ongoing question.
it's the
That's why.
it is an ongoing experiment, especially
Yeah.
for your own life, because
Mhm.
your life has different contexts than my
Yeah.
life.
That's true.
But what I found is being honest and also
Mhm.
inserting yourself, being bold enough to insert yourself
Mhm.
in situations where there's going to be people. For example,
Yeah.
when I started going to a new church in my hometown, when I moved back to my hometown, because being isolated as a single
Mhm.
person, I just knew that was not going to be great for my mental health. It
Yeah.
wasn't going to be great for me to meet people, do fun things,
Mhm.
and maybe someone knows my future husband. I don't know. I was like, let me
You don't
just
know.
widen this
You one
circle
person
out,
away from. Yeah.
one person away.
Yeah.
So what I did, like, I'm not necessarily big on, oddly enough, you would think I'd be great and big on life groups and Bible studies, but that necessarily wasn't my jam. But instead, I was like, you know what? I'm just going to do it anyway. I'm going to do
Yeah.
it anyway, and
Mhm.
just trust you, Lord, that as I decide to show up and
Mhm.
sign up for this
Yeah.
particular life group that has some sort of interest, pick a topic or
Yeah.
a part of town that you can get to easily,
Mhm.
and then just see. And here's the thing, I did this again in the fall of
Mhm.
just this last year, and I get to this small group, and I was like, no one here. I would never want to be friends with any. I'm just gonna be real. I'm that person. Sorry, guys. I would never be friends with any of
Like
y'all.
maybe just naturally we would
Yeah.
not cross
No.
paths or
No.
click. And
No.
that's okay.
No. But
Yeah.
here's the thing. What did I start with?
Mhm.
Being honest. And usually you're
True.
going to have to be the first one because everyone
Yeah.
wants to be kind of like churchy, clean, cutesy,
Yeah.
demure, whatever they want to be in the beginning. I just started out with like,
Mhm.
I am offended at my singleness right now, and I'm in pain
Mhm.
and I'm hurting. And
Yeah.
being around kids, which I love kids, I don't have any of my own, but feels painful. And many of these women had had kids, but I was like, that's not to shame anyone. I just wanted to be
Right.
really real, honest, and authentic in this space.
Mhm.
That particular life group and Bible study, those women ended up being some of my best
Mhm.
champions, now a part of my dating village.
Mhm.
And the Lord was like, I knew you wouldn't pick these people, but I picked them for
For
you. And
you.
not
Yeah.
everyone, it was like,
Yeah.
there's like 8 women in there, but 3 of those women are going to be probably lifelong friends of
Yeah.
mine.
Mm.
So honesty and bold insertion, if
Yeah.
that.
No, no, that totally makes sense. And I think what I'm beginning to see like that makes me excited for like the decade of being, in the 30s is like people know a little bit more just knowing themselves better where it's like, "Oh, actually, I really like to go here or I prefer this and it's not offensive." And
Yeah.
it's a kind thing. So it's like, "Hey,
Yes.
this is who I am. I know myself and this is a way that, you know, we can be friends, but you don't have to have everything in common to be friends, right? And so that has brought, I think, a lot of freedom and encouragement to
Yes.
me where, you're like, yeah, let's pull on to like these, things that like kind of almost like these strings where we can connect these things, but we don't have to look exactly alike because, like God is so much bigger than that, and we can learn so much more from one another. And the best way, like, I think one of the things for me is just like inviting friends to go get coffee. And if you're not a coffee drinker, go get tea. Or maybe we go get a Coke at McDonald's or go to Sonic,
Yes.
whatever it is.
Yes.
It doesn't
Yes.
have to be, it's just like, let's sit together and like even just talk about our testimony, right? And
Yeah.
talk about the path that God has taken you on. But it does take that, inserting yourself or take some courage to do that.
Yeah. There we go.
Which is
Yeah.
so true to be the first person to be an inviter. And so, like, I think we have to constantly just be aware and just like asking the Lord and like being in tune to the Holy Spirit of like, oh, let me see this person today. And just be like, hey, it might be I might swing and miss, but if not, they could be a best
100%.
fit for life,
Yeah,
right?
100%.
Yeah.
Yes, and give yourself that freedom to swing and miss as well.
Right.
Like, yeah.
Yeah. It doesn't mean you're a bad friend. You're the person who's trying to. So I think that's really, really encouraging and just a good thing of like, being like connected at your local church. Like there are opportunities that we can go to where the people are and the people of faith are because, we're gonna have at least that core thread of the gospel. And they're going to be sound people of wisdom to help us look more like Jesus because they want the best for us too. And but also just like the season that you're in of like it is really hard to be like, hey, this is hard, even though this is a good season, or I'm wishing for this future thing, but just being honest. And that takes a lot of courage and vulnerability. So
Yeah.
thank you for encouraging us to do that.
Yeah.
Because it can just be challenging when you feel like you're the
A-
only person in the room.
Absolutely. 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 But here's the
Like
secret.
physically. Yeah,
Everyone feels like the only person in the
everyone
room,
does. Yeah,
you
that's
know?
true.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh man. And it just takes one person to
Yeah.
make them not feel alone. Oh,
That's
that's
right.
so good. Okay. So we've talked about journaling a little bit. So,
Yeah.
in prayer, you're doing like this prayer series online, which is really
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
I love prayer and it's just been a huge, just I think it's a huge thing in our journey with the Lord and just
Yeah.
how we stay in constant conversation with Him. And so, how have you seen God answer prayers for community in your life and even like when you moved or moving back home, like starting over, have you seen him continuously show up in providing community?
I love this question so much. And I think you beautifully opened up with like the aspect of prayer, like
Mhm.
when praying for community.
Right.
And I
Mhm.
think honestly that is
Mhm.
and has been my key in this, is really just seeking the Lord, asking and trusting that He would lead
Yeah.
me to the right people.
Mm.
And we talked about, being honest, honest where you're at and things like that. And I knew there came a season in my life where I just needed to incorporate more play and
Mm.
more
Yeah.
fun. And so, I have been and had been serving in my local church, for years, decades, and doing different things in ministry. But I was missing the sense of play. And I realized I wanted to reconnect to some of my hobbies and the
Mm.
things that I just love to do. And
Yeah.
I think that's actually something really important to pay attention to, especially even as a believer, because sometimes we feel like hobbies are not so spiritual. They're not as sacred and holy as going, to a life group. And I
Yeah.
would like to just
Mm.
gently challenge that a bit.
Yep. I agree.
Uh,
Yeah.
and I started dancing again, and I love country line dancing, thus
Hmm.
the country song
The
that came in the
country.
mix.
Yeah. It makes sense.
So I country line dance. There's a big
Cool.
country line dancing subculture in Southern California, and it's become like one of like the sweetest and kind of most fun, playful, like light type of
Yeah.
places of community.
That's
But
so
I have
cool.
found other believers
Mm.
and some that are not believers, but just
Right.
really good
But yeah.
people
Yeah.
that have provided such a sense of community while I do the
Mm.
thing that God has graced me to do, even in a hobby. Like I'm a
Mm.
fairly decent, dancer. I enjoy it. It
Yeah.
just puts a smile on my face. So
Yeah.
thinking about like what puts a smile on your face that maybe you haven't
Mm.
taken time to reconnect to, because
Yeah.
you don't know there could actually be another believer
Hmm.
there in that space, or someone who just has friendship or wisdom, for
Yeah.
you that again, I encourage you to be plugged into a
Mhm.
local church. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I know sometimes that takes time, but while that's happening, while you're seeking the Lord and trusting the Lord and praying about that, maybe don't be afraid. I just sort of invite you and
Yeah.
offer, like, don't be afraid to reconnect to your
Hmm.
hobbies because there's community there in that as
Yeah.
well.
I think that's so good. And it's a practical thing where we can do something and not that, a small group or life group. Now we can't do that, but sometimes it just might not work in the season we're at. It might not work for the day. And so not blocking yourself off of like, oh, well, that was my shot. Like that was it. Right? Like, okay, Lord, that's it.
Yeah.
And being creative to be like, oh, where are other people gathering? And it doesn't have to be inside of a church. I mean,
Yeah.
obviously, like you're saying, be plugged into our local church. I have a huge heart for the church, and you do too.
Yeah.
And that is where we grow spiritually. But also like that idea of fun and play, like it's such a beautiful gift from God. And even for me, like 2024, I did this more really creative project where I took a Polaroid every single day, which is wild.
So cool.
It's so much fun, and it's like the Instax Mini, so it's not like the legit Polaroid. Being a photo
It
major, I have to
counts.
clarify that, like I
Okay.
have a lot of different cameras. But for me, like taking Polaroids or shooting film is a hobby because it is more expensive. It's not, cost effective. It takes more time to carry a camera around. It's kind of not that it's awkward, but it is a little awkward to be like, hey, can you take a picture? Or hey, can we pull this big camera out? However, I have found that some of my favorite memories, like not we don't just have them like on my phone, but they're analog and like we had to capture that
Mm,
space. Or even for like the SPL meetup, we went to an apple orchard and in Indiana, in Indy, and I was like, okay, guys, this is where we become best friends. Like we just have to get
yes.
close and be, personable. And I have seen just like part of it being a creative exercise, but also for me spiritually of seeing God's goodness in every day and seeing how if I'm in my office working from home in northern Indiana, it's pretty country out here. Like
Nice.
my neighbors are
Nice.
kind of far apart.
Yeah.
And I love that to the season that I'm in, it's been a really beautiful thing for my dog Kodak and I to go outside, all those things. But when you're in the same place physically, it can be hard to see what he's doing or how he's
Yeah.
working or to
Yep.
see a creative perspective. And so,
Yeah.
even though it's just taking a picture, to me, it's so much more than just taking a picture, but it does bring me
Absolutely.
joy. And so, whether it's dancing or taking photos, or I don't know, I've seen some of my friends learn how to skateboard, and I'm
Yeah.
like, that's
Let's
so rad.
go.
That is so
Yes.
epic. And
Yeah.
like, not being afraid to go out and try something new. And you have
Yes.
no idea, like, the friends you can meet or make. And even like I'm a part of like this small like business club in my community, and we all
Yes.
do different things, whether it's like soap or t-shirts
Yes.
or markets. And
Yeah.
I found just talking to people at the farmers market, it, it's
Yes.
so much fun because we're going through the same things of, okay, how do
So
you
it
set
is.
up a booth? How do you do this? How do you do that? And we can just have people who get it and
Yes.
be that change in our community too from the business side. But yeah, I just think the people are there. We just have to be brave enough to go and find them and
Yeah.
try something new. Yeah,
Yeah.
that is so
Yeah.
good.
And I
Yeah,
think too, being brave for yourself,
yeah,
as well. I think
right.
that's something I feel like the Lord is always inviting us into,
Yeah.
like to walk on the water, just to keep our
Mm-hmm.
eyes on Him,
Right.
and
Mm-hmm.
to
Yep.
step out. And you just know when you're doing it with the Lord, there is
Mm-hmm.
something
Yeah.
incredible on the other side. Like there always will be. And I think too,
Mhm.
even when we talked about like, if you swing and you miss,
Yeah.
know,
That's so true.
like
Yeah.
you're learning also
Hmm.
so much, in the
Right.
process, like what didn't work for you or what's not working or where you can
Right.
grow. So
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, there have been plenty of friends. I think I've asked to get coffee and maybe we've gone together one time and like that was so much fun,
yep.
but we're just maybe in different seasons or we live further
Yes.
apart and it doesn't mean we're not
Yes.
friends, right?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
just, okay, maybe I need to like send you voice memos to catch up, right?
But those are
Which
my
is so
favorite, by the
good.
way. Voice memos
Okay.
are keeping some of my deepest
Yes.
friendships alive.
Oh,
Voice
tell me
memos.
about it. I just voiced note with my friend Lydia. Shout out to her in Kentucky. And
Yes,
we're just
Lydia.
like, this is so great because we're
Mhm.
like, we could have been friends. Like, she went to a college here in Indiana, right near
Wow.
me, but we became friends when she was graduating. And so it's like, okay, we can still continue it though. So
Yes.
that you never know, but we just got to be creative or send your friends postcards. I do
Yeah.
that when I go travel, and they're
Oh,
like, okay, what's Addie doing? It's so much
yeah.
fun. So
Yes.
being creative and seeing new ways we can do that, and just kind of not believing the lie that no one else feels like you, and again praying those prayers like that one person who's sitting alone, like, or they're sitting with a big group, like there's more room for all of us to
Yeah.
just share our name, share what we do, and to, connect and be like, okay, hey, let's,
Yeah.
grab a seat. So I think that's really, really encouraging and really practical. And so we can dive into our hobbies. It's fun.
Yes.
I
Yes.
love it. So for our final thoughts, though, I think this has been such an encouraging conversation. And if I'm ever out in California, we'll
Yes.
we'll
Let me
connect
know. Yes,
because
please.
I love that coast and have some good friends there as well. And so,
Awesome.
but for friends, who are in that season where they're praying and seeking a close-knit community, what encouragement would you share to help us expand our circle of friends or just
Mm.
make those friendships like right where God has us, even if we think, okay, I'm not going to be here a long time or I want to be somewhere else, like to not miss out on the people that He wants to bring into your life in this season?
Mm. Oh, so good. One thing I want to say to all of us is your people are waiting for you.
Mm.
Like they want to meet you.
Oh.
And knowing that people are ready to actually connect with you. I think sometimes we think everyone is so
Mhm.
standoffish or they have their own
Yeah,
life to live because
right.
everyone's busy.
Mm.
But like in the kingdom, like there's always
Mhm.
time for you and your
Yes.
people are ready for you. They want to be around you.
Mm.
And I think carrying that, knowing that, again, we talked about, sometimes we feel like we're the only ones, or we're kind of like, am I
Yeah.
the only one feeling like
Hmm.
this? In actuality, almost more than half of the people in the room or
Yeah.
in the space, are feeling that way. And when like just by smiling or just asking someone
Hmm.
their name and how their week was, what was a highlight and what was a low light,
Hmm.
or the highlight reel and something mediocre if you don't want to go too
Yeah.
deep,
Yeah.
like
Sure.
just simply ask, because I
Yeah.
think
Hmm.
what I like to do right where I'm at, because again, look around who
Hmm.
you're curious about. Who do you think is
Yeah.
interesting? Who do you admire from afar?
Yeah.
Addie, you were talking about this courage. We need that courage to tell that person, like,
Mm-hmm.
seem incredible. And I just want to get to know
Yeah.
your name.
Yeah.
And do you have any advice for someone who is going through bop, bop, bop? Or
Yeah.
maybe not, you can read the
Right.
room as well,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
but look around who's around you right now. Even, I mean, we are in a social media age, someone that you
Mhm.
admire, let them know. And I would say one of the things that has opened friendship and community for me is that I love kind of giving encouragement, just kind of
Mhm.
like Skittles.
Yeah.
Um,
Why not? Just
why
share
not?
it. Share. Pass the rainbow. So pass the
Yeah, just
encouragement.
just passing them out like
It's
Skittles.
like confetti. Yeah.
Confetti, exactly. And the thing is,
Yeah.
it's like I also need that
Hmm.
encouragement,
Right. Yeah.
but the
We do
spirit
too.
of the Lord in us like
Hmm.
will bubble that up. And I
Yes.
just start
Yeah.
I will go up to someone and just say,
Hmm.
I love your scarf or whatever.
Yeah.
And that might just
Right.
like initiate a conversation. And so
Hmm.
I say, like, your people are waiting for you. They're ready for you. They want to
Hmm.
embrace you.
Yeah.
You'll have to step out, be courageous. I know we've said this like a million times, and be bold and
Yeah.
brave and
Sure.
courageous, but God is with you in this as well.
Hmm.
And he's made us for connection. Like you can
Yeah.
go in like confidently into
Hmm.
any room and know that God has made you for connection. The
Hmm.
level of what that connection will be is yet to be determined, but he's made you for connection. And that desire for community and connection is holy, it's good, it's
Hmm.
sacred, it is needed. And I feel led just to say, like, whoever's holding like the tension of a big dream or a promise from the Lord or
Hmm.
stepping into something, you will not get there by yourself.
Yeah. That's so
You will
true.
you will not get
Yeah.
there solo dolo. I do not care if you're studying to be a pastor, a
Hmm.
minister, an actor, a musician, and a great artist.
Hmm.
We were made for connection, and especially for following the Lord. You want to be in a space of safety and connection. And so know that that's already waiting for you. It's for you, but it's like, okay, lock eyes with Jesus and just step out of the boat.
Oh,
That's kind of
and go into
encouragement.
the water.
Go into the
Yeah.
water.
Oh man, that is so good. And I love that you mentioned, if we have those bigger dreams or if we're trying to pursue a lofty goal that we feel God has placed in our heart and He wants to partner with us in or just to walk in obedience into that. One, I think we've said this, but say it again, it's so important to have that wise counsel, or like what you called it, your dating village, your village of people to be like, hey, can I like bounce this off you? Especially if you're a verbal processor, right? But at the same time, like doing it alone, there's not going to be anyone to share it with, and it's not fun. God designed us, I know He designed us for intentional community and fellowship because it is such a sweet, picture of Him and like sometimes we think friendship is for us and for our own benefit, but it is a gift to one another where you have something you're picking up and, learning from God, and you get to pass it on and share it with me. And so, what a beautiful encouragement that the right friend will come into your life, and you might need to hear this thing at the right exact time, or actually this friend is going through the same thing, or they have the same background and you needed someone to process that with, and you didn't even know them like how many months ago.
Exactly.
And so you never,
Exactly.
never know what God is doing, what he's up to. And also, like, I do social media for my work, for university, and so I love the power of social media, but also using it for the gospel and for creativity and for friendship and community, because it can be a place like just, following you after we met in Dollywood, seeing like how much of like a vibrant life there is, like there's a positive,
Yeah.
life when you ever come on. And thinking about like now it's kind of a common thing. I tell my friends, I'm like, oh yeah, they're like my Instagram friends, and they're like my online people, and like
Yeah. Yeah.
they're like, Addie, what? But I'm like,
Yeah.
literally, Lydia
Yeah.
and I met online, and then
Yeah.
SPL people, you and
Yes.
I, like
Yep.
there's community, and there are people who want to be in community who are seeking those friends. And so, oh my goodness, this gets me like fired up. Um,
Yes.
and
Yes.
so excited because I don't like, we don't even know the people who are going to listen to this. And that is why this podcast exists, for more community to come in. And
Yes.
so, just for our friends, like, no, you already have a friend in Patrice and I, and we'll be your
Yes.
friends.
Yes.
Absolutely. And
Yes.
just to encourage you to try something new, to be that first person who pulls up a chair at the table or invites that person in or takes that first step. And it's going to be awkward. It's going to be hard, like you said. But on the other side of it, it's so, so worth it. And I think the encouragement is we get to make the kingdom bigger. Whether
Mm,
they know Jesus, like then we just get to see into that lens of, wow, there's another brother and sister who we just get
yeah.
to invite into our lives and see how
Yeah.
big and vast God is. But if
Yeah.
not, we get to bring this person alongside of us and say, hey, I'm running this way towards Jesus. Do you want to go with me? Right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think that's so encouraging. And oh my
Yeah.
goodness, Patrice, I know we could talk for a lot longer, and I feel like you'll probably come back on the podcast
Yay,
sometime because
I
you've been
hope
such a
so.
good guest. So, so
Yes.
fun. And it's an honor to be your friend, only for a few months, but it's been so
Yes.
fun.
Yeah, it's totally been fun. I love
I
this.
love it so much. And so for our new friends here, where can they just stay up to date with all the things that you're doing?
Oh, thank you for that. I've had so much fun. This has been a great conversation. I feel excited for those that are listening because I think their community is
Mm,
just going to get richer and
mm,
deeper, which is going to
yeah.
be beautiful. They can find me on Instagram mostly at Together Good Co. So that's the word together good and then CO. And then I have a small space on Patreon for women, Christian women, where I love to do prayer. I am also a certified somatic sort of body oriented coach. And so basically that just means honoring and letting the Lord kind of
Mm-hmm.
also, while we're doing prayer, like really paying attention to someone's body. And so
Mm-hmm.
I do a little bit of that in that space, and it's patreon.com// Together Good Co. But Together Good Co is basically all of my ministry and creative community and work is under that name.
Awesome. That's so perfect. And friends, if you're listening, I'll put all of those links in the show notes. You can connect and go say hi to Patrice and just be your friend and just stay encouraged with all the, and, all the ways that you're carrying the gentle love of Jesus where you are. And so thank you again, Patrice, for being a guest. This has been my pleasure to have you on and just such a good conversation. And friends, thank you so much for listening and have a wonderful week and continue to carry the gentle love of Jesus wherever you go.